Hi everyone, Constantine here, and I thought I would continue on my little spiel about Japanese horror, this time with Miike Takashi's 2004 or 2005, I think 2005 film One Missed Call, or CHAKUSHIN Ari, whichever one you prefer. And I'm also briefly going to mention the American remake. So, we have American remake, Japanese version that you can't see because it's reflecting. So, like the other Japanese horror movies I've discussed, One Missed Call gets its premise from the perceived malaise that's affecting modern Japanese society. In other words, the failure of the nuclear family structure. This time, it's child abuse. Hooray! Child abuse! Everyone knows the plot of this Japanese horror because I'm sure everyone has seen the trailers for the American remake. It follows college student Yumi, who is played by Japanese mega idol, what's her name? Shibasaki Cole? I don't really know my Japanese mega idols. Anyway, it's played by her, and she was a girl who also suffered from abuse when she was a child, and now studies psychology. However, Yumi's life takes a darker turn when her friends start receiving missed phone calls that not only have the date, but also a recording of their death. And then they actually do die. So, Yumi and Yamashita Hidoshi, the older brother of another victim, who is played by Tsutsumi Shinichi, set out to solve the mystery of the murderous phone calls before it's too late. Now, I'm a huge nerd, and I enjoy watching the original Japanese film back-to-back with the American remake, because I like comparing them and seeing how well Hollywood has transferred the original storyline into their remake. And after watching the remake of One Missed Call, I can comfortably say that no one should ever watch this film. Ever. I have never seen a remake manage to stay so close to the original storyline and yet still somehow manage to completely fail at transferring over the mood, the atmosphere, or even like the general themes of the movie. It really sucks. And the few changes they did make somehow managed to make the film even worse. So just save yourself like an hour or 2 hours of your life and don't watch it. But back to the Japanese version. Despite being severely handicapped by the storyline, Miike has managed to squeeze out a fairly decent film. After all, I think the most successful thing about Japanese horror isn't really the storyline. The storylines are typically fairly repetitive, and in the case of One Missed Call, are simplistic and rather ridiculous. But it's the aesthetic quality of the film, such as the atmosphere, the sound, the music, etc., that makes Japanese horror movies so scary and enjoyable. But that leads us to my biggest problem with the film. Although One Missed Call was directed by Miike Takashi, the whole film follows quite closely to the aesthetic that was already developed by The Ring and The Grudge. In fact, I describe most of the film as Miike giving the audience his best Shimizu Takashi impression. It's quite simply not the sort of film you would expect to see from Miike because it's so blatantly an adventure in commercialism, and it really only attempts to capitalize on the pre-existing Japanese horror genre. It doesn't really offer anything new or interesting. So I was actually quite surprised during most of the film that Miike was basically giving Kadokawa, the production company, exactly what they wanted, namely making a film exactly the way Nakata Hideo or Shimizu Takashi would have. That said, the ending of the film really takes the whole storyline in a completely different direction. As in typical Japanese horror movies, the ghost isn't necessarily defeated. In an interview, Miike gives this sort of weird explanation about what he was trying to achieve with the ending. Yumi's confrontation with the ghost has awakened her true self, and now she can live life the way she wants. And stabbing Shinichi's character was a way of expressing her love, and Shinichi accepts her love, and now they can live happily under the same sky, making it a happy ending. This doesn't really explain the fact that it seems like Yumi is possessed by the ghost in the end, and in any case, it's a typical Miike ending in that he turns the tables on you and completely changes the mood of the film and basically leaves you to ponder just what happened and what it all means. It's very typical Miike. Plus, he adds in a completely random and totally inappropriate pop song for the ending theme, which reminds me a little bit of Audition. Basically, my point is that I was ready to dismiss One Missed Call until I saw the ending, which made me reconsider my feelings about the film. While I don't consider it the best Japanese horror film ever made, or even in my top 5 or 10, or however many in my top, it certainly deserves to be watched. And I mean, it's okay. It's creepy, but it's not the best. So those are my thoughts on One Missed Call. And for right now, this is kind of going to end my whole thing about Japanese horror. I'm probably going to touch on individual movies later, but I'm kind of tired of only talking about Japanese horror movies. So that said, I will make another episode soon, and I hope you guys keep watching and keep subscribing and commenting, because I like talking to people. So have a good day.